Today could be a little emotional, at least to some people, but as I said, today is not going to be a sermon. It's not going to be a normal sermon. It's going to be a story, a true story. But I think it's probably better than any sermon that can be preached at the moment, at least. To start everything off, a lot of you know that I was so worried about the plan, about satisfying everybody, and just the plan working the way that I wanted it to work. And to illustrate to you how God was working way out in front of this whole ordeal, I'm going to tell you something to start with, and I want you to keep it in the back of your minds, and you're going to be like, well, how does this all fit in? But you'll find out at the end. May the 25th, I laid to rest a good friend of mine, a man that I met years ago through Gene Ward and some of that group, and in our friendship, he had a heart surgery, and he didn't go to church. He loved God, believed in God 100%, but he didn't go to church, at least at the time. So I remember driving down, going through his heart surgery, and him just lightening up when I came into the room, and he said, I'll see you sometime. Well, after he healed from his open heart surgery, and this gentleman was probably in his late 70s at the time. I'm not 100% positive on his age at the time. But he ended up one Sunday surprising me and walking in those doors and sitting about right there where Brian Brenniger's at. Now keep that in mind. His name was Gene Freeman. On May the 25th, I laid him to rest, and after the funeral service was over, the family, his wife Loretta, who is here today, just told me that that they were really pleased, that I did a good job, and that they loved me, and blah, blah, blah. And then some birdies would tell me, hey, be praying for Loretta. She's thinking about coming to church. Okay, now keep all that in your minds right now. Right now I want to show you a video that Jessica Byerly put together of the pictures that people sent in and things that she recorded from our trip. If somebody could hit the lights, please.
Thank you for loving us, and thank you for giving
Well, you saw the verse on the screen. It says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. And that's why I'm so proud of this church, because you showed in every which way over the last 2 weeks that you cared about others. I've got a list here, and for time's sake, I'm not going to read it, but we had at least 17 different businesses in and around this community support Mayo Christian Church. We had at least 7 churches from here to Harrisonburg, Virginia, support this mission. 58 people went. 58 people in our church went. But hey, even if you didn't go, if you prayed, if you gave, if you cooked breakfast here before we left, and this was a group effort. Every single person in this church was actively involved with this trip. But what amazed me is 58, half of our active membership, half of you sacrificed, got off work last minute, took time off with no vacation. You went. I said before we left, and you heard it in there, that I wanted them to remember that forever, the day that Mayo rolled into town. You know, as I was thinking about it, it hit me this morning, and I had to put a little extra work on Jenna. I want to show you another video right now. Watch this one. This morning, I started a new tradition during COVID when we were in the parking lot instead of the building. And so what I would do every single morning is, we had the service in the back here. And I would get up here and I would go through my normal routine that I've always done. But I added one thing. I would walk around that whole parking lot, not exercising before people got here, but I would walk around that parking lot and I would pray for what was going to happen in that parking lot that day. Well, this morning I was doing that same thing. Now I walk around the building. That's what I've done since COVID, since we came back in. And I came around the corner and the sun was peeking over the old building. If you've got Facebook, you saw the picture. And when I came around the corner over by that pine tree, it lit that whole building up. It was bright, and I just had to take a picture of it. And then my mind flashed to that video that Randy Facebook Live the day that we pulled out, and that was really amazing to me, that video, especially with the sound, hearing the roar of the trucks. 18 vehicles, trucks and trailers rolled out there. We picked up the last 2 vehicles in Patrick Springs with Alan Hall and his family hauling the heavy equipment. And so that amazed me. But the thing that after we got back and I debriefed and I was going back and looking at everything, that reminded me of Matthew chapter 5. That church, did you see how it's 5, 6 in the morning at this moment right here. It's pitch black. And yet that church building was lit up. It was bright. The truck lights, but the building was on that hill, bright. Now that church building is not the church. This building is not the church. We are. And it reminded me of Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. Let me read it to you real quick. It says this. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Mayo was shining bright that morning. Mayo Christian Church, our community, our congregation, shined bright in Elk Park, North Carolina. As I looked in the rear view, Jerry Giovanni, who was driving the truck at the small amount of time that I was leading the convoy down 58, that didn't last long because Brian Brenniger comes flying by, and then Teddy Lester, which ended up getting not one speeding ticket, but two. Handicap, whatever. But as we're going down 58, Jerry's got this thing, maybe y'all's newer, maybe it's a GMC Chevrolet thing, I don't know. And I'm breaking my neck trying to look out the back. And he said, Kurt, watch this. And he flips a button, and the screen turns into a camera. And we're driving down 58, and Jerry said, this is something to be proud of. As far as you could see in the dark was a convoy, an army of people and trucks in the distance. We shine bright. Now, getting way out of my comfort zone. It's the only notes. What I want to do is briefly walk you through the story from start to finish. Sunday before last, after church, we got talking. People wanted to know what we could do, if we could help. So Monday, Tuesday, I worked my contacts. I called people. I called my preacher friends. Kyle told you from Horse Pasture. I called him Tuesday, frustrated, like can't find nowhere, can't get in nowhere, it just ain't going nowhere. Get up the phone call my friend Les Croft that I went to Bible college with. It's the preacher at Ridgeway Baptist Church right on the corner there. He says, yeah, he said, you remember that guy at Camp Pitt that was on the board? Brian Chadwick. He said, I'll send him a message. I'll try to get some information. He reaches out to me later on that night. That was a dead-end road. I Googled a church. First one that popped up, Spruce Pine. Well, we didn't go there. Next church, Elk Park Christian Church. And this is where God, remember the story I told you at the beginning, where all this starts rolling. Elk Park Christian Church. Elk Park, North Carolina. They were glad to have us. They couldn't wait. We decided on Wednesday. We decided that the following Wednesday is when we rolled in. So Wednesday, everybody's excited. Somehow, God's way out in front of this thing. A lady, I'm not going to mention names the best I can today because I've been told not to from the people that I want to brag about. But somebody calls me and they're like, hey, let's go get 3,000 pillows. I'm like, okay. We haul a couple loads of pillows. The ball is rolling now. Business after business starts calling. Family after family starts calling. Wednesday night rolls around. We meet at church. There's a whole table full of stuff already. I'll never forget as the leadership came and said, hey, we're going to give $10,000. The excitement in the building that Wednesday night was amazing. Thursday, we're working nonstop. Friday, working nonstop. Revival's about to start. We got, I'm going to say one name. Pam Brenniger and Jan Turner had warned me slam out that day, okay? And I'm thinking, we're going to go home, I'm going to get a shower and get ready for a revival. And I get a phone call, hey, we got to roll to YMCA. So, we rolled to YMCA. Some of the others went to another place to pick up water. We load up. We're rushing to get back to church now. We're rushing to get back here. I call another gentleman on the phone. He's like, man, I sure hope people are here to help us. And if we had any doubt in you, we'll never doubt you again. We roll into this church building, and there was probably 30 people here, and we unloaded those trucks, trailers, got it all done. The cool thing is there was people here that did not go to this church, that showed up to help us unload. We go into revival night one, Friday night, everything was good. We go into all day Saturday, people scrambling, working, getting everything together. Come into revival Saturday night, everything is great again. Sunday's homecoming, it's excitement. It's just so much excitement in the air here. Homecoming, I get up, can't sleep, get up here. She didn't even know I had left the house, didn't know where I was, nothing. I get up here, my shorts, t-shirt, I'm like, I got to get this building presentable. Starting at 6 o'clock, people are rolling in here, not from our church, rolling in, Hillcrest, other people rolling in, dropping stuff off. Y'all know me, I get a little frustrated when I got something on my mind, I got to do something. I had to go home, I had to shave, I had to get my nice clothes on. I'm rushing, thinking it's all about me, like I told y'all last week. My phone rings. It's Bucky Taylor. I'm trying to get out of this building to go get cleaned. I'm trying to talk to Bucky. Somebody else rolls in with stuff. I'm talking to Bucky. I'm pointing and directing. But I couldn't slow down long enough to listen. And Bucky says, Kurt, I learned from Jerry Hilton this week, Bucky thought that we were already there and that I was preaching at Elk Park Church that Sunday. And he got into an argument with Jerry, and Jerry's like, he's not there. Bucky said he is there. But I wasn't there yet. We weren't. So I'm talking to Bucky on the phone, people bringing stuff in left and right, and Bucky said, hey, do you know that you're in my hometown? Do you know that you're where me and my wife are from? That we grew up there, we were born and raised there, we still have families there, but we had to move here for work? I'm like, no, I had no clue. He's like, how did you find out about it? How did this come about? And I'm like, Google. It was the second church that popped up. If the first church had acted, I'm on record. We wouldn't have been at Elk Park. But it didn't go the way Google wanted and the way that I thought. And we ended up at Elk Park. And Bucky's like, that's our hometown. It's just so wild. So we have an amazing homecoming service. The excitement's in the air. Monday, y'all work. Actually, we load up most all the trailers, correct, Sunday after homecoming. I think people didn't leave here till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Don't quote me on that. It was at least 3 that we all left. We loaded up everything. Monday, everybody's beating the doors down, getting last-minute preparations. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, the big morning. I don't believe anybody slept that night because of excitement. I'll never forget, I was in my garage, pedaling my chainsaw that I didn't get to use. Teddy, I cranked it up. Thank you for not breaking it. But I get up to church at 4:50. I would say over half of the crew is already here. We're not leaving till 6. We come in here to a great meal that, where's she at? Reagan and her husband, you saw him cooking. Jeannie and Randy and Pat Nance, and I was so running around I didn't pay attention. So if anybody else was here cooking, I appreciate you. Had a great meal. We have a prayer thing. We get in the trucks. We head down the road. We get way separated. It's hard to keep that many trucks together. We roll in, we work, we separate. A group of them go on the chainsaw gang. I called them, and let me tell you, Catherine Shelton, where's she at? I thought I saw her. Catherine Shelton and Bethany O'Connor outworked every man on that chainsaw gang. I mean, everybody. Steve Brenniger, Teddy Lester, the loggers, all of them, Brian, they were bragging about those 2 women. And how they handled them saws and carried them logs and all that stuff. A group of the women and men, I had to say, which I was not happy about at first. You know, one of the best things about my job here is my father reminded me this week, I don't have to be the boss. I can delegate. And you've got to learn to delegate. But I had women there that could take the lead and tell me what to do. And at first, like I said, I wanted to go with the men. But it turned out to be the biggest blessing when I asked this lady what I should do. And as Willie said, you didn't ask, she told you. You remember that, Will? It was the biggest blessing. She wanted me to be able to talk to people. And that's where everybody was blessed in different ways for this. But this is where really the last 25 minutes was the memories that I will have forever. The people served the food, they served like warm, edible food, they served their medicines, all that stuff, divided it up. One of the things that stood out to me is if you set up in Martinsville, Virginia, and you turn the church in the middle of town into a Walmart, it's going to get looted, okay? And several other people here have agreed. I noticed that those people are walking out with the bare essentials. I asked one person, I said, I was telling them, fill your bag up, take more, take another plate of food with you. No, we over and over the same thing. No, we got to make sure there's some for everybody. You'd done that in Martinsville, you'd be out in an hour. They'd fill their bags up, their cars up, take 10 things of toilet paper, and they'd just be gone. But they were taking what they needed, and they were concerned about the others. Well, That's one of the things that stuck out. We divided up the money. We gave the church $5,000. Several different people in our church came up and handed me cash, and we would hand it out to people. And it was hard to get a hold of 58 people, so I missed some. But I would hand it out to the people, and I'd say, hey, you come in contact with a family, you help them. You help them. And another fascinating thing was a lot of people came back and gave me their cash and said, hey, some people wouldn't take it. They'd say, no, find somebody that's got it worse. So we left $5,000 there. We've got $3,000 left over because about every single person on the trip said, hey, we want to go back. And so we will, and that'll come at a later date. So, my personal story in the trip was don't judge a book by its cover. It was on Facebook. It came down to the end, and we had met this man doing another job at another church, and I invited him to come down and get a warm meal with us. And then we talked, they left. We had to be out at 4, and I had about an hour left, and I'm in the parking lot, and this hillbilly named Mike Cable, I called him Si, he looked like Duck Dynasty. He comes in, and he's asking for me, and he finds me, and he's like, hey, he said, I want to load my side-by-side up with supplies and food and take it to shut-ins. Now, when I got these houses, their houses weren't destroyed, house trailers weren't destroyed, but their driveways were washed out, and they had no way in or out. It was all elderly widows or widowers. So I'm scared, and I told y'all, come armed, which turned out to be completely not necessary. There was no danger. I never felt uncomfortable. I don't think anybody did. But Jerry DiGiovanni rolled him with an armory. And so this man comes back, and some of the men were like, Kurt, let us go with you. I'm like, nah, I got it. And I looked at Jerry, and I was like, so he brings me the pistol. Jessica Biley says, just let me go. I know how to use that. I said, you don't think I know how to use a gun? So I tuck it in my pants. You can actually see it in the picture if you zoom in around my belt line. And he hands me an extra clip to put in my pocket. And I'm like, man, hollow points. I looked at and I get on that side-by-side. And we go no more than a half a mile up the street. We stop at the first trailer, give them a few things, talk to them, pray with them, come to the next one, same thing, come to the next one, the same thing. And the last one was a man named Curtis Heaton. And I said, my name's Kurt. And he said, maybe it's a God thing. Long story short, some people ran into a church down the road called Heaton Church that got damaged. This man, Curtis Heaton, who Loretta knows the family, Curtis Heaton, who was in his 70s, there's a picture. He is this one right here. He had lost his wife years back. He showed me his scar. He had surgery was opened up from here to here. Had nothing, didn't draw a check. No, nothing. But he was happy. And he was joyful because, and I think you can see, all that my friend over here, the hillbilly, took was loaves of bread, water, and there was the toilet paper, and there was a bottle of Clorox. And he was so happy that that's all he had. Well, come to find out, his great-grandfather actually started the Heaton Church right down the road. They also owned a store and a skating rink that Bucky and Gail and Loretta and Jean used to go skating in when they were kids. You can't make this stuff up. So on the way back, me and Mike were riding down, and we get back to the church, and he starts to leave, and I rush up to him and get his attention, and I go to the truck, and a man in our church had given me a couple $1,000 to help how I saw fit. And I had $1,000 left of this gentleman's money, and he's here, and he doesn't want me to tell who he is, but he deserves a lot of credit. And I gave Mike Cable that $1,000, and I said, look, we got to go. And he wouldn't take it. He owns a big farm. He owns the Cable family there, as I found out, owns a whole lot there. You'd never know by looking at the man. He stunk. No water, right? He had been working his tail off. And somebody there told me that he had been wearing the same outfit for 3 days. But he didn't care about that stuff. He didn't put no stock in what he had or his possessions or his money. And I said, look, I'm giving you the money. You're taking it. It's from a family in my church. They want you to have it. You've got to help people. He finally said, okay, I'll take it. I said, you do how it seems fit. If you want to help 10 people with $100, if you do what you see need. And I said, but promise me you'll come back to this church every day and you'll keep delivering food. And he said, I've done it for 10 days and I'll do it till I die. And I'm going back. He invited me to his farm, and I'm taking my 3 sons, and I'm going to pal around. We talked to him one night. I talked to him on the phone on the porch Friday night, and I'm taking them 3 boys, and they go hunt. Supposedly they got big bucks up there. And I'm going to ride around with Mike on the side-by-side, but this time not with a pistol. Story after story. Okay, so we get home. Everybody's excited. Everybody's tired. I got a little sick during the night, woke up, and I basically didn't leave the bathroom from 2 a.m. to 10 in the morning, and I've got a funeral service that I got to preach. And I'm in a bind because as the preacher of a funeral, there's no backup, right? So I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to have to pull out Grandma's Depends. Don't think it's a joke. Ain't no joking. I'm really scared. It lets up. I preached the funeral. He was a good friend of mine, and I ain't gonna lie, from the crash, probably from the 20-some Red Bulls that I drank during that period, part of that's thanks to Stephanie Brenniger. But I crashed. I was sad. All the joy, all the excitement, all the build-up, and to be honest, I felt like I had a purpose in my life that week. That's what, and I didn't do no more than anybody else did, but I felt like, and I've got a purpose every Sunday being y'all's preacher, but it's not the same. Like I felt that it was, I just felt like I was doing something good. And so I was sad. Friday morning, Samantha's been having a lot with school and everything, and she asked me if I would take the kids to school. So I drive. Actually, I didn't take the kids to school. I don't know where I was driving. I get on our road. It's like 7:30. And Bucky Taylor's in front of me, leaving the pig farm. So I pick my phone up, and I call him. And I'm telling him about the trip. He wanted to know about it. And like I said, I'm kind of sad because it's like, what are we going to do now? It's over. Bucky Taylor, I told him the story, and he said, and I told him about the men's names, Mike Cable. The man right here on the bottom, his name was Scott. I can't remember his last name. But rough as a cob, Harley man. Owns a Christmas tree farm. Every other word is a cuss word out of his mouth, but you couldn't help but like him. And me and Wayne Clark took a liking to this dude. He was what you see is what you get. His wife left him because she couldn't stand. He's got 3 Harleys, and he parks them inside of his house. I don't know if he was joking about that part about his wife leaving, but he told me and Wayne Clark that he built a ramp, a handicap ramp, and he drives his Harleys and he parks them in his living room. He was a cool dude, and he worked hard. So I get off the phone and I'm telling Bucky about all these different people, the Heaton, the Cables, and Scott that owned the Christmas tree farm, and he said, you have got to call my wife, Gail. So I said, okay. So I get off of Bucky and I call Gail. And Gail elaborates more about these people that we did life with for a day, telling me these things. Tell me about these 3 families. And she said, do you know, remember the story I began with Gene Freeman? She said, do you know that is Loretta's hometown? She was actually born and raised in Elk Park. And did you know that she was a baby born into the Elk Park Christian Church? Her mama, who was Cindy Bear, was her name, was big in the establishment of that church. And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. And she was like, you mean you just out of nowhere picked Elk Park? And I went through the whole rundown, Google and all that, blah, blah, blah. She's like, you've got to go to Loretta's house. And so now that excitement's coming back from the whole trip. Like, hey, maybe God, not maybe, but God really was in this thing, I believe, all the way back to May the 25th at Gene Freeman's funeral service. So y'all know me, and I'll tell y'all can tell last week, as Chad Joyce was saying, I was wired. And I get, when I do something, that it might not be perfect or good, but my wife will tell you, if she tells me to build a chicken pen, I'm going to build a mansion for it, okay? Like, I overkill everything that I do. And I was like, man, this thing, I was starting to get excited. I said, this thing, it really wasn't my plan. It really was God's plan. Like, this was for real now. So I rush, and it's early. I don't do calls. I don't visit early in the morning. I'm like, I don't care. So I rushed to Loretta's house. Her son and his wife and family live in Tampa Bay. They were here to escape the storm. I park. I go down, knock on the door. They're in their pajamas. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I got to tell you something. And she comes out there, and it's cold on the porch. And I don't even give her a chance. And I have to say, I was worried about some of y'all because last week I was so excited about all this. And some people I looked at, and I guess people just don't show excitement like I do. But I was wired. And I was really frustrated, to be honest with some of y'all, because I'm like, how can y'all not be excited like I am? But we just show it differently, I guess. Well, I get out of my truck, I'm beelining to her porch. They see me through their windows. They didn't realize who it was because I had a hat on. And they come out there, and I just start in on the story. And I'm just 100 miles an hour, and I see the tears in Loretta's eyes. And I walk through the whole story that I've told about how all this came about. And I was like, guess whose church we were at? And I didn't, as I'm telling her the story, I never mentioned the words Elk Park or Elk Park Church. I just said we went to a little town in North Carolina. And I get to the end, and I'm like, it was Elk Park. And she knew as she finished my sentence, and as she was sitting there crying, and I asked her permission to share the story in its entirety when she came in today. And she was just bawling because our little old people out here in Southwest Virginia and North Carolina went to her home church where she was born and raised. You tell me that wasn't a God thing. You tell me God wasn't in it from the beginning. But this is where it really gets cool. Glenn Martin pulled me aside last Sunday, and I'm a one-track mind. All I was thinking about was Wednesday. And he pulls me aside. And I'm like, okay, he's going to tell me something about the thing. There's 148 people here. So I'm like, okay, what, Glenn? And he says, can you go visit Loretta? She really is thinking about coming to church here. I'm like, okay, Glenn. And then I'm back to business. Not knowing that God has set this up and orchestrated this. So on that porch, Friday morning, she's crying. Our son, who I guess had gone back and visited through the years because he knew everywhere that we were talking about, was sitting there. He was crying, but had a grin on his face this big the whole time. And I said, Loretta, I just think this is a God thing, and I got to tell you something. And I said, Loretta, after the funeral service, somebody in your family told me that to visit you, that you were really impressed and you were thinking about coming to Mayo. And I said, Loretta, Sunday, during homecoming, Glenn Martin pulls me aside and says, Loretta, go visit her. I think she's getting close to coming to church. And I look at Loretta and I said, you can't tell me that this ain't God. And she said, let me tell you something. She said, I guess you didn't know. She said, but one day I asked Bucky and Gail to lead me to the church while I follow behind you because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get here. And she said that they got here and she was so scared because the windy roads and narrow roads. And she's bawling, and she's like, and I told myself, I said, I love it, and I'd love to go there, but I just can't do it. I don't know how long ago that was, months ago that happened. And I'm sitting there on that porch after the whole story, and I'm like, well, maybe. But she said, maybe God's telling me something different now. You see, I could go on and on and on, and I don't even know what time it is. It's 12:09. It's the latest I've preached in a long time. But the story, it didn't end. I was sad that it was over. And then I found myself Monday morning just as pumped as before we went. It just goes to prove that God knew what he was doing the whole time. Chad touched on it in Sunday school. In my mind, I had it's like movies. We watch a movie, we want to save the world. Movies ain't real, right? The love story in the movie ain't real. It's just not the way life works. The hero stories, but I think that way. I'm like, man. And I thought we were going to roll in there. We were going to be pulling people out of mudslides still, and we were going to be the superheroes, as Chad said. That's what I had pictures, and I was so worried that if us 58 people got down there, and I forgot the fact that we were 10 days out, okay? They had already been cleaning and doing things for 10 days. But in my mind, I was like, if it's not like this, then these people are going to be disappointed. And I left there worried as I drove back that night if everybody was fulfilled. But this is what I realized through it all. We're not called to save the world, right? We were called to do whatever we saw to do. Whether it was folding clothes under a picnic shelter, organize them, feeding them, cutting trees, dragging brush. But as that lady that made me stay knew, and I didn't realize, the most important thing that we did that day was simply being there and talking to the people and letting them know that we cared about them. And so I don't know what else to say. I could go on and on sharing the story, and I know all of y'all got tons of stories, and as Loretta said on her porch, one day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a book.
I done started.
But it was so many times. Like, these people aren't fictional to y'all that didn't go. Like, yeah, we got to meet some of them. But Loretta lived with them. Their families. Their families were intertwined. And so God had a plan. He unfolded his plan exactly the way that he intended to unfold it. And what I loved is I had several men that stepped out of their comfort zones, and women. But Thursday texted me saying, hey, we want to go back. And we want to go. And we're going to work. And so stay tuned. There will be more to it. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words right now, and so we're going to close. Does anything have anything that they would like to add before we close today?
I'd just like to say that I think we all went there thinking that we would try to be a blessing to those folks, and it turned out we were blessed.
Yep. And isn't that wild how it always works that way? When we came home from Oklahoma, that was the same feeling we had. We went to help them, but we're the ones that got blessed. Y'all were amazing this week. And to me, it was truly a trip of a lifetime. And I've never been as proud of every one of you as I am right now. Before I close today, this...
I would also like to thank everyone that has heard that. I can't get through that without crying. But I thank everybody. Everyone, thank you with all my heart and my soul. Thank you for having them. And had my mama been there, she'd been thinking you too. And if I ever do anything for you, let me know. I'm not always able, but I'm going to. But thank you.
And let me tell you one more thing I forgot. When we were on the porch, Friday night, me and Samantha, she was charting. I was sitting out there, and I get bored of just sitting on the porch, okay? So I pulled my phone out, and I said, I'm going to call Mike Cable and see if he remembers me. What are y'all laughing at? Am I making y'all late to lunch? So I said, I'm going to see if this dude remembers me.
Nobody's gonna forget.
Yeah, you're not forgetting. That's why we laughed.
And I answer, announce that? Announce that? Don't say nothing. Announce it, yes or no? Do people know? Okay.
Sitting on the porch.
What was I saying?
Call Mike Cable.
Sitting on the front porch.
You called Mike Cable.
Hey, you need to come talk to her first, please. I don't want somebody to find out something. It's nothing bad. Sitting on the front porch, and I call Mike. And I call Mike, and I'm talking to him. I'm like, hey, this is Kurt Ashley. You remember the preacher from Mayo that rode with you? And he's like, yeah. Yeah, I definitely remember you. And then I was like, man, he does. I said, we just got talking. And I said, you're never going to believe this. I said, have you ever heard of a woman named Cindy Bear? Cindy Bear? And he said, and I guess he was with a group of people, and he said, any of y'all heard the name Cindy Bear? And we hear in the background, people say, yeah, she was from the Christian church. And I said, well, Mike, I said, do you remember a Bucky and a Gail Taylor and a Loretta Freeman? Was that your mate? Yeah. Bear. Loretta Bear? And he said, I know the Bears and I know the Taylors, but I'm only 60. I said, they're older than me. I thought he was like in his mid-70s. But he knew, or they knew in that group, wherever he was at, who he was with, remembered Cindy Bear. And I thought that was just really cool. All right, hey, y'all did amazing. I'm so proud of y'all. We're in an incredible stretch. And for my personal life, I use these moments to boost me into the future, you know? Because we all need encouragement. Like this, we've been revived through revival in this trip. It has revived every single one of us. And it has energized me, excited me. And these are the moments that will carry our church, that will empower us to get through the tough times when we face them in our personal lives. These are the moments that push us as a church to continue fighting and doing what we got to do to make the world around us better. And so I'm proud of y'all. Right now we're going to stand up. I know it wasn't a sermon, but if you got a decision to make, if you've seen God work and you've been on the fence about God and maybe not giving Him your life, I hope through this story that you see that He's real and that He loves you. Or maybe that if you are a Christian and you've maybe fallen away or your faith has got weak, I hope that through this story, y'all gonna stand up? I hope that through this story you see that God is real and that energizes your faith and brings you back to the Lord. Or maybe you just need somebody to talk to, whatever. If you got a decision to make, I'll be up front. But let's stand and let's worship our great